Okay, welcome to week 6 of CIS 4710, and this is a lab component for week 6. So what we're going to talk about tonight is the project. So we should start looking at developing the project, which is the vulnerable image. So let me just kind of pull up the syllabus and show you where we're at. So far, we're in week 6. As you can see, you have nothing to do this week. Yay! So it's a perfect opportunity for you to start working on your project. Okay? So I give a lot of insight here, I believe, in the assignment section. Down towards the bottom. Yeah. So project part 1, project part 2. So project part 1 is where you're going to spend the most time. Project part 2 is basically just a documentation exercise, what you did for the project, okay? But you have to take really good notes. The reason I'm having you do the documentation piece is if you're going to ever go into the pen testing field, you've got to keep really good notes. Just like forensics, right? You know, Professor West, Dr. Carlton, you take the forensics with them, they make you take really good notes, right? Pen testing, same story. Okay? So let's walk through this. I give some other good leads on how to do this. We ran a competition here this past summer at DEF CON called VulnSec, where we had people compete with these types of images. And basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to have you build something like your CIS target, something like Metasploitable 2 that you can practice on. All right, stuff that is that is like what you can find in a Vuln Hub. And I don't care if you build it in Linux. I don't care if you build it in Windows. I had one student last term that built it in an Android simulator. He got an A. Okay, I'm just saying. All right, because I was just impressed that he got that built and he got it running in VMware altogether. All right, but I give you a link there to VulnSec as to what we're kind of expecting. I'm going to walk through this kind of in a step-by-step fashion. I also want to give you some tools that you can use and also give you some breadcrumbs or some leads where you can find other software that you can put into these vulnerable images. All right. Also, homework 5, which you guys are starting to work, some of you are starting to work on, okay, the Apache struts, is another good one that you can use in Linux, all right, that creates a vulnerable image, all right? But let's just kind of go over what I'm looking for at the 50,000 foot level, all right? It has to have some sort of purpose, all right? So you just can't have a image and go, okay, I'm just going to throw all the software on here and everything and just hack it, all right? I want it to have some sort of content to it. So a little bit better than what I have in the CIS target image. I'm actually rebuilding the CIS target, so it has a purpose. That could be a web server, a mail server, a FTP server, but it has to, and it can have multiple components in it. That is perfectly fine. Microsoft had a product a while back, I think they still have it, called Small Business Server. I love doing pen testing where I found that software because it had a web server, a mail server, an FTP server, and all these components that I could, enumerate. So you do find those types of images out there on the internet. So it's okay if you build a system that is like that from that component. I kind of tried to make CIS Target 1 along those lines, but I kind of failed. It's broken in places, and I've used it for so many semesters that it's just gotten more broken and more broken and more broken over time. Okay. Um, it has to have some sort of purpose, like I said. So you have to have at least 5 flags or vulnerabilities that you document. Okay. Now, these vulnerabilities can be from a multitude of things. Okay. If you use Server 2008, like what I did in CIS 2010, it already has MS09050, right? That's a vulnerability. You can set the administrator password. You can change the GPO and set the password to password. That's a vulnerability. Okay. You can put in some sort of vulnerability in HTML on a web page, right? What we used to call the magic blue dot. So if you ever ran through, I think it was DVWA, Dan Vulnerable Web App, on one of those multi-day images, you'll find a little link there, and it opens up a netcat backdoor. That's a vulnerability, okay? But if you don't search through the code, you wouldn't find it. They don't have to necessarily come up or pop up in a OpenVOS scan, right? Like a weak password may not come up in an OpenVOS scan. Right? An embedded netcat backdoor in a web page may not come up in an OpenVOS scan, but it still is a vulnerability. Does that make sense to everybody? So I'm looking for 5 verifiable, documentable vulnerabilities. Now, do you have to stop at 5? No, you don't. Do they have to show up in the OWASP scan or the OpenVOS scan? No, they don't. Okay, if they do, great. But if they don't, that's okay. So I give a couple of other pieces of information in the, where did I put that? Here we go. Nope. All right. Some other information in the site here, the SharePoint site, 360, what is this called? OneDrive site, thank you. So I threw a folder up here called Vulnerable Software. So this is just some stuff that I've collected over time. This is mostly used by Windows, all right? So I have actually a lot of apps that are in this. You need 7-zip to unzip it, so that's a free download. But there's a mail server in here. There's an old XAMPP server in here, like what you found in CIS Target 1. That's in here. There's some other broken applications that you can use that have vulnerabilities. If you did a vulnerability scan, they're going to pop up. All right. I also include OWASP broken web apps that are in here. I think these can be run in either Windows or Linux. I think these are just basically web pages. Okay. Actually, this is an entire broken. This is a VM. I take that back. This is a VM. So you could extract stuff from this VM and use it as well. That is a Linux server. So, and then there's a Easy FTP. This is a known vulnerable FTP server that runs in Windows. So if you want to find your own software to run, perfectly fine as well. What I suggest, write this down or look at it, www.rapid7.com/db. This is Rapid7's vulnerability and exploit database. This is really cool. This is kind of a shortcut to find vulnerable software, and then you're just a couple of Google searches away from finding said software and downloading it and having it available to put into your vulnerable image. All right? I'm not going to lie to you folks. Where you're going to spend a preponderance of your time on this server is building out the content, whether you're building a website or you're building a mail server with some content in it. That's fine. Or an FTP server with additional site in it, building users into the server. That's where you're going to spend a lot of your time, more than actually just loading the server. The other part of the time that you'll spend the most is just testing. Okay? And here's why. This is where you get really good at doing pen tests. When you build these servers and then you have to test them to see what works and what doesn't, that's when you really start honing your skills. So when you see this stuff in the wild, you recognize it immediately. Does that make sense to everybody? Perfect. So to use the vulnerability and exploit database, all you need to do is just search for something. Now you can search by a MS number, you can search by a CVE number, you can just search by keyword. Okay? So I would go ahead and just select all, and let's just say Solarwinds. All right? Solarwinds has a lot of problems in some of their software. So this comes up with 7 entries out of the 3,000 and change that Rapid7 has. All right. So for example, they have SolarWinds Firewall Security Manager Client Session Handling Vulnerability. SolarWinds Orion account management, admin creation. SolarWinds Storage Manager authentication bypass. Ooh, that looks pretty interesting. Storage Manager SQL injection. Denial of service. Let's go back to this first one here. Firewall Security Manager Client Session Handling Vulnerability. And click into that. It's relatively new. It's about 3 years old. All right, so ignore that. Don't fall for the clickbait. But they have a URL from SolarWinds of their hotfix for it. So this is their hotfix to fix it. And here's the CVE. And they also have some other good information. But what I would do in this situation is for the Firewall Security Manager, just right-click on that, copy it, go back to Google, paste it in there, and try to find a download for it. I used to be able to find one relatively easy on this one. So here we go. SolarWinds Firewall Security Manager. One last week. It looks like it's the right one. This is 6.6. And if we go back to the 6.6.5, so anything pre-6.6.5, like 6.6 will be vulnerable, right? You would think so. There it is. We'll look at, hopefully I won't get a virus. If I do, there it is, 6.6.5. There's that vulnerable software package. See how easy that was to find? So that you can find a lot of vulnerable software. If you look at the vulnerability databases, I showed you Rapid7's. There are other organizations out there that have that. And now I encourage you to use Rapid7. Why? Anybody know why? What does Rapid7 make? Metasploit. So you're going to have modules in there in Metasploit for these vulnerabilities. It'll help you hone your skills and let you get better with Metasploit. Does that make sense? Cool. So I can save that. I will throw that up in the vulnerable software package database as well. Okay, so that's kind of what I'm looking for. Now, what base operating system you select, totally up to you. Doesn't matter one iota. Okay. Let me go ahead and get that and start that upload. Key there. Boop. There we go. So that'll be up there shortly. That's only a few hundred megs, I think. Not that big. Yeah, 250 megs. So that'll be up there in a couple of minutes. The other thing you can look at, I think, in the shared with everybody is you can, if you already have the CIS target, you can play around with that, try to fix it. You can load up your own version of whatever software. If you want to go back and get an older version of Linux, I suggest that you start at distrowatch.com. Distrowatch.com is a good resource for old versions of Linux. The older the version, the more susceptible to vulnerabilities it's going to have. Okay? And it's free, which is always nice. So if you wanted to look for an old version of Debian, all you have to do is go to the Debian page, or, do a search for Debian. There you go. There's a Debian page. If you scroll down, you will find all of the different version numbers all the way back to, wow, version 1.1. Now, a lot of these older versions are 32-bit versions, so keep that in mind. There may be some compatibility issues in getting them up and running, etc., but they're oftentimes a lot of fun to play with. Okay? If you saw something you liked in Metasploitable, like the Unreal IRC, if you go back to Rapid7 and you go back to their database, all you need to do, there we go. Type in Unreal IRC, search for that. No, I guess if I spell Unreal correctly, right? Oh, I guess I have to select the database too. All right, so that gives me a lot of hits. That gives me 196. Let's type in Unreal IRC. How about just Unreal? So there's 9. QEMU vulnerabilities, so stuff in SUSE, FreeBSD. Here we go. See that? That's what you had in Metasploitable 2. So if you follow that link, there's the module name, authors, the CVE. Okay. This one might be a little bit harder to find to download. But you have the version number now, 3281. There he is. I found a GitHub. Maybe it's there. So that's the exploit. That's not the actual module. Yeah, so you might have to do a little bit further digging to download that, find the RPC package, and then install it on a Linux system if you were doing that. You don't have to do that, but just saying if you were trying to. All right, so what I've done is basically gotta find my VMware here. So what I have done is I have just basically taken a base image of Windows 2008 R2 and built it. Okay. So all I did is take the ISO, loaded it in there like you would build any other type of operating system, like you've done in other classes, 307, 460, 4670, whatever the numbers are these days. Okay. And I have a base operating system here. Okay. I've also done a couple of other things. Oops. I've created some other users. I'm going to create some other users in here. I remember my password. All right. Now, I've not activated this one yet, and that's where I think I went wrong with my first one. So if I go to Server Manager, actually, let's do this. Let's go to Computer. Properties. So this one is not saying that it is not registered, which is good. Okay. But you can do a lot to kind of make a system vulnerable just through configuration. So here I have set up another role in this system. I've set up the web server. All right. And I haven't loaded any. Actually, I've only set up the FTP service through Microsoft FTP. All right. And I have a default website. All right, and a default FTP site. Why are you not doing what I want you to do here? Not under features. There we go. It's hard to read. So here's my IIS. So it's stopped. So what I have to do here is basically start the website. Start. FTP publishing service is not started and is in manual start mode. So, fine. Go to my services tab. Find FTP publishing service. As you can see, it's not started. Change it. Automatic start. Actually, automatic start. Start. There you go. Okay, okay. Now it's started. Now I should be able to refresh it. There. Now it's running. So now under the default FTP site, I can go in here and browse or open. There's the folder. If I look at the properties of the folder, okay, you can see that I've already given, different users control. So one other thing I love about Windows is typically, I don't think they did it in this version, they make a guest account. So if you're unsure, you can go to admin tools and then, I think it's control panel. Yeah, control panel, users and computers. All right. You can create a guest account. So looks like I only have manage another account. So here, oh, it does have a guest account. Oh, I went too far. So, but the guest account is turned off. So one of the things I love to do is turn the guest account on. It's one of the first things as I do hacking wise. And then, I give it a stupid, simple password like password. Our guest, even better. We'll turn it on. And then we will, come on. So I think the guest account doesn't have a password, but we can go back to our FTP root, right click, go back into our properties, and then we can say, look, group and user names. We can edit that, and then we can add guest. Okay, you guys should never, ever, ever do this, by the way. This is like bad juju. And then give guest full control. Okay, that's like really, really, really bad. Okay, but now, now we have the FTP site running. We have it all set up and everything else. I can go from my host machine. If I run WinSCP, now I think that's right. Let me edit that. If I type in guest, I don't think guest has a password. I think it's a blank password. If I log in with guest, access denied. Okay, interesting. So I'd have to troubleshoot through that why guest doesn't have access to the site. Permissions. Well, looks like he's got full permissions. Let me see if I can log on with guest. Yeah, see, guest doesn't have a password. So I'd have to play around with that a little bit to get guest to work. Or I also made a user called Anonymous. I should be able to get in there with Anonymous now as well. So you can play around with that from a standpoint. Also, if you go into the FTP root, whoops. So if you go into the FTP root directory, you go up one, you right click, and you work on the properties and the security permissions. All right, and sharing. So it is shared. Wonderful. So it has read-write control. So here, yeah, I have full access to it, so I can read to it, write to it, throw a file in there that I can execute, etc. So the easy way to also throw in a netcat backdoor, or reverse TCP shell, or something like that. Okay, guys, got any questions? So what I'd like you to do for next week, since you don't have any homework, spend some time on this. And next Thursday, during class time, I'm going to come around and see what you got. All right, so please bring your laptop that you can show me what you've built so far. All right, hopefully by next week you at least have an operating system built that you're going to use. Okay, so if you're already pretty good at Windows, I highly encourage you get outside your comfort box, try Linux. If you're already really good at Linux and Windows, get outside your comfort box, look for an Android operating system that you can load up, or even an Apple iOS emulator that you want to load up. Okay, now I don't mind for those of you who are wanting to do something a little, again, outside the box. If you want to build this in VirtualBox instead of VMware, I'm okay with that. Just make sure you save it as an OVA so I can convert it later. Make sense? You guys got any questions? Otherwise, I'm just going to give you yes, sir. Do you have remote access to your desktop at home? Okay, then just show me that from remote desktop. Okay, that's a good question. I'm sure somebody who's going to watch this in my other classes online would appreciate that question. Anything else? All right, I'll let you guys turn to and work on this if you want to, or you can go home. I'll be around here for the next, 20, 30 minutes, and I'll help you all out.